Corn Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones, and of course an MSNBC political lens. Congressman Quigley, I don't know, maybe I'm a cynic, maybe I've been studying politics way too long. It looks to me like this guy had his head chopped off because nobody takes him seriously anymore. That would be Nunes, who was working for the White House, delivering and actually getting information from the White House he wouldn't share with you.
Well, it's interesting. It follows on the heels of Senator Graham and McCain both calling the White House and the chairman's behavior a bizarre ordeal. The very unfortunate part of all this is the fact that probably the most important investigation of the White House in my lifetime has been distracted, delayed for some time simply because of these actions.
What do you make of these beheadings? I mean, it looks like the axe is out at the White House. You've got Steve Bannon, was a big shot at the National Security Council. Now he's off that list completely. Now Nunes, they were all defending right up until yesterday. He's gone. It seems to me there's a lot of collateral damage to that little midnight jaunt that this guy Nunes took to the White House at the behest of the president. It's all karma. It's all like going to hell. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a bigger picture. I think you had Vice President Biden suggesting last week that the president needs to grow up. My suggestion is that he needs to take responsibility, and I mean for anything. We've talked about the Yemen raid recently. He blamed the generals for that. He blamed the joint session of Congress the next day issues with his senior staff. The health care on the Tea Party and the Democrats, the press, anybody but himself. The fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars, but sometimes in ourselves. He would gain a lot more respect, I think, on the Hill if at once he stood up and said, I own this one, the buck stops here.
Let me go to David on this, and I will hit you with real cynicism. Okay? I think I can outdo you on this one. Here's a president who's under incredible scrutiny for his relations, such as they were with the Russians, and all those months that the Russians were helping him get elected president. And here he is tonight. Apparently, we hear lots of talk about it, guests we've had on, that there may be military action against Russia's #1 ally in the world, maybe, and certainly in the Middle East, which is Syria. Is this to cover his tracks?
Well, that'd be the wag the dog scenario, right? And perhaps...
No, I mean, it covers tracks being, you think I'm in bed with the Russians?
Yes, right, yeah. And it would distract from the investigation and would show I'm not in bed with the Russians. I can launch strikes that are inconvenient and may even end up killing some Russians. Who knows where that goes from here. You know,
would that clean him? Would that clear him of the charge that he was dealing with the Russians?
I don't think so, but it may distract us if we get into a mess in Syria. To me, one of the big pictures here, because you talk about what Nunes did, we've seen the NSC, it's only been 11 weeks. It's been a disaster. We have on our second national security advisor, people who want to be fired are kept in place for political reasons. They're involved with Nunes and this midnight run. And listen, tonight's a good example. We need sound and sane national security policy. That functions at the White House is centered in the National Security Council. And so Trump has not been able to put a team in place there. And only yesterday afternoon he's saying, you know, my thinking has changed on Syria, when he always said to Obama, don't do any. And now we might be rushing into military action without him contemplating it, without a national security council that works. Let me go back to the
Congressman. Who do you think is advising the president tonight in terms of possible military action, possibly in the next couple of hours even? Is it Jared Kushner, his son-in-law? Is it Tillerson, who comes from Exxon, rather, a oil man? Where does it come from? Does it come from what's left of the State Department? Is there one, or does it come from Mad Dog Mattis at the Pentagon? I see a lot of circulating people that don't seem to even talk to each other.
We have absolutely zero information of how the White House makes decisions. Is certainly one that seems to be all over the place. Use healthcare as an example. Every 12 hours it seemed to change the path, the plan, who they're listening to. Among that group, they're all a little bit scary. I hope they're reading Barbara Tuchman's book, The Guns of August,
I know.
For the sake and peace of all of us.
Let me ask you about your role as a U.S. Congressman. You've been elected a couple terms now. You know the responsibilities of your office. Do you think Congress should be notified before military action is taken against another sovereign government?
Well, unless there's some emergency. Well, let's put it this way. For all the criticism that President Obama got about Syria, when all the tough talk you heard about Syria, when he came to them with some plans about what to do, there was absolutely no vote in that bark. For all the tough talk, you didn't see members actually step up and say, yes, let's have a vote. Let's give the president the authority, because they knew the American public was not for doing what was going to be suggested by some of them, putting a lot of American lives at risk.
Well, let me test you on this one. If you were called in the next half hour by the president or someone in his cabinet or someone at a high level and said, we're doing a punitive raid, and that's what it is. It's not an existential assault on the Assad regime. We're going to whack them hard. We're going to take out some of their planes. They're going to know we meant business, and somehow this is going to change the mindset of Assad and his people, his claque. My question, would you say yes to that, or would you say no to that?
Yeah, I have to say, I've been briefed on Syria for over 2 years now. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It is layered, textured, and complicated. This would be more than a phone call that says we're going to do this. It is what is the long-term plan? It is, if it is simply to make us feel better,